Welcome back, everybody. We're just going to take a few 2-3 minute brief statements from some other girls who have their own personal stories and testimonies to share from a variety of sports. Many of us were here yesterday to hear Lily Brasch and her inspiring story, but many of you also were not here. So she's just going to do a short recap for a couple minutes to kickstart us, and then we'll have some other new amazing athletes come and briefly make a statement. Thank you. So this is Lily.
Thank you, Marcy, for the intro. Thank you, Kim and Marcy, for putting this together. And thank you to everyone who has joined to make this just truly incredible, truly powerful, and encouraging. I am grateful to be a part of this. My name is Lily Brash, and I was born with muscular dystrophy. But I, too, am a female athlete. I'm here to give a voice to those who don't have one. I'm here to encourage the next girl who may be watching from home to know that she is powerful, she is strong, and her voice matters. In support of Icon's message, I'm here to speak up. From my experience, weightlifting and swimming, I'm here to speak up and use my voice and protect my right to do so. As a female athlete, I have a responsibility to represent females and encourage them to speak powerfully. As a female athlete with a muscle disorder, I have a responsibility to carve a path for other young athletes who once believed they couldn't. To cover a couple points from my speech yesterday, I just want to remind you guys that 1, our barriers are a fallacy. 2, our true power is in our mind. And 3, all of us, as we have, should come together, unite, and speak up. A quick story of when I was a child and I was in gym class. Because of my muscle disease, I found every excuse not to go. I didn't want people to see the way I walked, the way I attempted to run, the way I threw a basketball differently, the way I climbed stairs differently. Years later, the mile came around in high school, and I was so embarrassed by the way I performed that I vowed to never participate in athletic activities again. Years later, a strong female voice pulled me out. Dina Castillo taught me to stand tall and strong and trained me to stand confident on the bodybuilding stage this past September. As a strong female athlete, I felt proud. As a female athlete with a disability, I could not imagine what it would feel to be forced to compete against those who are fully abled. And I must speak out and unite with females of the world to protect our right to speak and to fair competition. And the last thing, when I was climbing the mountain, 1 step, 2 step, barely being able to climb, it was strong female advocates and athletes who helped me up that mountain. I'm forever grateful to be a part of this community and thankful to be inspired by many of you in this room today. It is a true honor to be included. Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much, Lily. Next up, we will hear from Olivia Rondo.
Hello, everyone. First off, I'd like to say thank you so much to Icons, to Marcy, to Kim, to Brody McFarland from the Aaron Hotel for doing a lot of logistics stuff with this event. I'm very excited to be here, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak on this really anytime I can. I'm Olivia Rondo. My main job is I'm a political commentator and journalist. I'm a frequent guest on Fox News, and I'm behind some of the most viral videos on the topic of transgender athletes in women's sports that you guys may have seen on YouTube, Facebook, all the social media. I'm also a female athlete. I'm a lifelong martial artist. I'm a black belt in Taekwondo, a blue belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I have extensive experience in Krav Maga and MMA. But my real true passion is wrestling. And, and I think I come from a kind of unique place because wrestling, it does not have the same Title IX abilities as a lot of sports. We're not nationally sanctioned, so that means where I'm from, my hometown or my home state of Maryland, we do not have girls' teams in high schools. So when I started wrestling in high school, I was on the boys' team. It was very hard. My first year, I won my first match and lost the rest, like complete, like L after L after L. And it was hard to cope with. I dealt with a lot of sexism. Referees and coaches and teammates would say, "You're not supposed to be here." I remember before, I think my second match after, the referee called me to the side, but within earshot of the 50 guys that I was going to be competing with and against. This is a man's sport, and if you lose, you cannot cry. You don't belong here. And he got fired, but that's just what I had to go through. That's what I had to deal with. And I felt so driven because of the hate I got from people in my own community or people who I competed against that I decided I was going to get better. I was not going to have another season where I lost, 10 out of 11 matches. I just wasn't going to do that again. So in the off season, summer rolls around, and I start competing against girls. That was the only time I would ever get to compete against girls was at national events, larger events. There basically is no girls wrestling in Maryland or in the DMV area, or at least when I was in high school a few years ago. And within 8 months of wrestling, I became third in the nation in women's wrestling. I came back to the boys' season the next year, and I went on a win streak. And I made some local headlines and things like that. And people started to use my story in a way that I didn't appreciate. They were like, "Look at this girl. She's such an anomaly. She's beating all these boys. Suddenly, she has so much success. Maybe transgender athletes should be allowed in women's sports because look at this girl. She's beating all these boys." But I'm an anomaly. And to go over my accolades, just to put this in perspective, I was never state ranked in boys wrestling. I was an exceptional or average wrestler compared to males, so I won some, I lost some. But I was on the Olympic development team for women's wrestling. I'm a 3-time national champion and 6-time All-American. And I was the first women's junior Olympic champion. So, thank you. But just to put that in perspective, you can be at the top of the women's game and still not even be ranked in the men's game. So people didn't really understand that. I wanted to use this platform to say just because some girls are an anomaly and can compete against boys and can beat boys, that doesn't mean we should have to. And now seeing that Title IX seems to be rolling back across other sports who already had sanctioned girls wrestling in schools, swimming, soccer, it's heartbreaking to me because women's wrestlers barely have chances as it already is. So if this continues to happen, all the progress that we've made has been reversed. When I committed to college, I think in 2017, 2018, there were no women's wrestling in Division I schools. The highest division we could go was Division II. We all compete together in one division. There was something like maybe 30 schools in the country with women's wrestling. Now it's grown. I believe it's the fastest growing women's collegiate sport, but it's still quite small compared to some of the other sports that some of you great athletes compete in. And I just want to get to where you guys are at. Like, this is amazing. Like, Division I NCAA champions and people who have all these scholarship funding, I love it. I love that for you guys. And I want to get there myself with my own sport. And the goal just keeps seeming further and further away when we tolerate biological males in women's sports. I had to deal with biological males for my entire high school career. By the third year of my high school career, after recruiters saw me beating up these boys, I was recruited to the Women's Olympic Development Team, and it was the first year that they had it. And it was just amazing for that opportunity, but it also put it in perspective how rare it was for me to be successful against boys. So rare that they plucked me and took me out of that school. I was sent away to boarding school for the Olympic Development Team in Pennsylvania. And I competed internationally. I was on Team USA for a while. It was a really good time, but I can't help but feel kind of a sinking gut feeling that maybe I was the last girl or among the last girls to even have that opportunity because we're sliding backwards. it is so concerning to me to see my state, which still does not have girls wrestling in high schools, which still I think only has one college with women's wrestling in Maryland, to now we're talking about letting men in my sport after I was forced to wrestle men when there was no other opportunity for me to wrestle girls. And yeah, it's just really sad. Just to go over a little bit of the scientific part, a lot of people will say, well, because their testosterone levels are lowered or because they've taken estrogen or hormones or gotten surgery, what's the big deal? What's the issue? And a lot of people don't think about, martial arts or full-body combat sports such as wrestling. So much goes into that besides testosterone level. For me, I have exceptionally small hands and wrists, and that makes it kind of hard for me to do a lot of wrestling moves. We do a lot of collar tying, a lot of wrist tying. I have to grab a lot of things, right? For a man who probably has like double the size hands as I do to compete in that, it would be disastrous, and I faced the consequences, and I had to actually change the way I wrestled when I wrestled boys because I couldn't rely on things like grip strength and upper body strength. I really relied on a lot of my judo skills because I had a lower center of gravity than a lot of the guys I was wrestling. Another thing that people don't really realize is, well, they'll make the argument, oh, well, because you're in weight classes, if you weigh the same as a boy, clearly it's fair. What people don't realize is legally in the wrestling body, USA Wrestling, women can't even go to the same body fat percentage as men. We have to stop at about 12%. Men, legally, they can cut weight till 8% body fat. So even at the same weight class, I'm going to have a lower level of muscle density and a higher level of fat than a man weighing the exact same. So the testosterone levels, the estrogen levels, that's not going to change that. That's not going to change that. And so that's why I feel so passionate about this, is because my sport is still not at the level of more major sports such as swimming, soccer, a lot of collegiate NCAA sports. And we haven't even peaked yet, and we're already seeing it being torn down, and it really breaks my heart. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. Marcy, Kim, thank you guys for listening. And I admire all the athletes that just spoke before me. I love you guys. You guys came before us, and you guys are the reason that we even have women's wrestling that's even starting to be on the come up. So thank you.
Okay, next up we're going to have Adriana McLamb, volleyball player and current coach.
I just want to start off by echoing how cool it is to be here. Really, really cool. There are some people in this room that I've grown up as idols for me, and to be able to share a stage with them is beyond belief. So thank you to Kim and Marcy, who have made this whole thing possible in 55 days, because this is incredible. This year, we are celebrating the 50th anniversary of Title IX, which helped give women the opportunity to play and compete on a level playing field. This should have been the year of the female athlete. We should be celebrating the countless wins female athletes have achieved on and off the court, field, and pool. But this progress is continuously being threatened by those who are putting wokeness above what is right and fair to biological female athletes. As a former NCAA Division I volleyball athlete from Florida International University, a daughter of a collegiate athlete and coach, AAU All-American, USA Volleyball Women Junior International player, and now my most fulfilling achievement, a coach of junior athletes who are working hard to compete at the next level, I see firsthand the mental and physical toll it takes on female athletes to compete at a high level. We're seeing a rise in depression and a decline in mental health of our female athletes, and barriers are continuing to be built around them. Despite record-breaking attendance at female athletic events, world records being beaten, and the sheer growth of sports for females, consistently we see that our athletes are fighting an uphill battle within their sports, whether that be for exposure, resources, or fairness. Most recently, instead of protecting female sports and athletes, the governing bodies of our sports are making it harder for female athletes to compete now more than ever due to their inaction to prevent male-bodied athletes from participating in female athletics. There are many physiological differences between female and male athletes, as well as a large distinction between men's and women's sports, particularly volleyball. The speed of the men's game is faster. Fun fact, The fastest serve in men's volleyball is 78.9 miles per hour, whereas the females' record is 64 miles per hour. I don't know if you've been driving in Florida, that nearly 15 miles an hour will get you run off the road. As mentioned earlier today and countless times, the men's net is exactly 7.5 inches higher than the women's, and the men's average height for a player is 6 inches higher than the women's. As you can tell, I'm height deprived. I played a position in volleyball that is known for being the shortest member of the team. I'm 5'3", and those who play my position on the men's teams are frequently above 6 feet. It's kind of comical, but I can clearly walk underneath the men's net. If I were to compete with my male counterparts for the same roles on teams, I would have failed, no matter the amount of grit, determination, and hard work that I put into my sport. These differences aren't just specific to volleyball. Softball fields are smaller than baseball fields, women's basketballs are smaller than men's, and the list goes on. These differences in sports give female athletes the ability and opportunity to compete at a high level. But that high level is now being threatened by male-bodied athletes entering into the space. None of this is an opinion or even a political statement, and it's unfair for those in the opposition to paint it as something other than what it truly is: scientific facts. Allowing biological men to play against biological women in female sports puts women at a huge disadvantage and sets them up to fail. What's the point of even having a women's only team if biological men are going to be allowed to compete on it? It works to counter Title IX, which so many athletes and coaches fought hard to enact, some of those athletes currently in this very room. It would be devastating for female athletics as a whole, especially for those athletes who have worked so hard to earn a scholarship or even on a high school or collegiate team, or even worse, playing at that higher level of Olympics or internationally. This could mark the end of women's sports as a whole if we don't stop it as a united voice of female athletes. I've learned by playing a team sport that I am stronger with my teammates around me and behind me. I want my players that I coach to know that they can achieve anything, but it starts with being able to compete on a level playing field and have equal opportunities to succeed. I know today, with this group of female athletes and those who will join us in the future, we will be victorious in one of the hardest competitions we have faced, saving women's sports. Thank you.
Next up is my friend Annie Grievers, who I recently asked to wake up at 1:30 a.m. to go on Fox News Live with me, and she said yes. Annie is a swimmer, an All-American, a U.S. national team member, and also an NCAA Women of the Year runner-up.
Thank you. Well, I told Marshy, put me in, because my heart rate's so high. I could just, well, I have false confidence. I feel like I could do amazing things. But I haven't swum in a while. My name's Annie. I found swimming when I was 7 years old as a part of my neighborhood swim team. It was the first thing I remember being really good at. I started year-round swimming when I was 12. I fell in love with racing, but I had no idea the world of opportunities that swimming would open up for me. I was fortunate enough to swim for a legendary high school team in Texas. I was the top high school breaststroker in the country by my senior year. I loved everything about the sport. The band of brothers and sisters I trained with, the way practices could push you through pain barriers to find a new level of endurance, the way you could read someone's character as you watch them compete and train. I learned how to rebound after a disappointment, how one person's mood could affect a team, how a group of like-minded competitors could draw out the very best in each other. I attended the University of Arizona and got to be a part of their first NCAA team title in 2008. Our men and women's teams trained together, so we found it fitting that the men won their first team title 1 week after we women brought home our team trophy. There was no room for selfish interests on the U of A pool deck. We were of one mind going into those meets. My teammates and coaches at U of A propelled me to be in the top 5 in my event at Olympic trials in 2008 and 2012. From 2007 through 2011, I had the privilege of competing for the U.S. in Japan, China, Mexico, and France. Swimming introduced me to my husband, Matt Grievers, a 4-time Olympic gold medalist with a heart that outshines any of his aquatic achievements. It's hard to picture my life without the incredible gifts swimming continually gave me. Matt and I have 2 little girls, aged 2 and 5 now. As I watched this year's NCAAs unfold, I wrestled with my thoughts. Was there a way to allow this new category of athlete to compete alongside biological women? I listened to both sides, but I was haunted by the vision of what my daughter's NCAA experience might look like if they so chose to pursue a sport. Would there even be room for them to have the bounty of opportunities I was handed thanks to Title IX? Or would they be one unfair spot shy of their chance to be on their dream collegiate team or the travel team or an A relay? In one online exchange, an acquaintance asked me, "But Annie, have you ever beaten a boy?" I told her, of course I had over my 17 years in the sport, but that was far too vague a question. At the 2010 NCAA championships, I was a senior trying to capture my first individual title in the 100 breaststroke. I shocked myself and took nearly a full second off my best time to set an NCAA record and win the event. My time was a 58.06. So here's the right question. Would I be able to compete with the men at the 2010 NCAA championships? The winning time at the men's championship that year was a 51.65, 6.5 seconds faster than my record-setting time. Side by side, the men's champ would have beaten me by 20 yards, nearly a full length in a 4-lap race. Even the slowest male at the NCAA meet would have beaten me by a significant margin. I sought an individual title for 4 years. If someone entered my event that year and snatched it away from me after a group of people not representing the majority opinion deemed their participation fair, I cannot imagine my heartbreak. The climate in the NCAA this year was disconcerting. A wishy-washy NCAA decision, a host of coaches kept quiet for fear of being fired, women being told to be quiet, not to voice their opinions for fear of being labeled hateful, when all they and we ask for is a preserved fairness across all 8 lanes, that Title IX be treated as a sacred legislation to keep women's sports a place for opportunity. My hope is that college leaders find the courage to do the right thing, knowing there's a tribe of fierce women ready to back up their decisions. Thanks for listening and for being here. Thanks so much to the Icons founders for bringing us together to be encouraged as we fight for our daughters' futures in sport.
Next up is a friend of mine. I actually met her at the gym, and you do not want to go up against her in the squat rack. This is Jenny Yukich. She's a former collegiate soccer player.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jenny Yukich. I am a former collegiate soccer player, All-American athlete, and a regional champion. I moved on and had a professional career in athletics as well. Growing up, sports was a really big passion of mine. I didn't really come from a whole lot, and being able to play sports gave me so many opportunities that I would not have been able to have if it wasn't for Title IX. I am a mother now, and I stand up here because of her. She's 5, and she's been in the gym with me every single day since she was 3 months old. She loves it. She's now playing sports. She does tennis, soccer, swimming, and horseback riding. And one thing about being an athlete, whether you're male or female, you put a lot of sacrifice and passion into what you love. For me, that sacrifice, you miss out on friends, family, different activities because you have practice. You wake up earlier than everybody else. Sometimes you go to bed later because you had a late practice. And to think that she has the passion right now as a young athlete and the sacrifices that she's going to make to become an even greater athlete. One day, I hope, if she decides in 10 years from now sports aren't for her, then that's okay. But I want her sacrifices to be acknowledged the same way that they were acknowledged for me growing up. I want her to have those same opportunities that I received through athletics. And it scares me to think that that might not be for her one day, because a biological man can come in and take her spot on one of these teams. She's not going to have the same opportunities to break records that I hold in the state of Kansas for cross-country, track, and soccer, goals scored, because a man might be able to come in and take that from her. And other girls, you know, that are going to be working really, really hard for a scholarship at school one day, whatever that is. I stand up here because we need to be a voice for everyone that's not currently listening right now. They don't think it's important, or it's not that big of a deal, but it is, because these little girls all have goals, they all have dreams, and they want to grow up and be great and have great opportunities like the rest of us athletes. So I want to thank Marcy and Kim for inviting me to come up here and speak and put my story out there and what I feel and how I feel about Title IX and us taking steps back in this nation and our little girls not having those same opportunities. Thank you.
Next up is Seth Houston. He is the head coach at Rice, and he was the first and still only current swim coach to speak out publicly this past season.
Thanks, Marcy, and thanks for inviting me. Thank you, Kim, as well. Speaking up, who'd have thought? Then I'd end up standing up here several months later. But it's been nothing but a great adventure to kind of immerse myself in support of women's athletics, and I've always been in it. I'm the head swim coach at Rice University. I've coached all women, only women's program at Rice for the last 20 years, and you know, I've gotten a front row seat to see just incredible young women come in and really come in as girls at 17 and 18 and 16 and 17 when I'm recruiting them, and leave is ready to go, independent, valuable, strong women when they leave at 22, and then get to follow kind of what they're doing after they graduate and move on to bigger and better things. My daughter swam for me at Rice, so I also got to be a parent, and I'm a proud father of a strong, independent woman. And I know her experiences as an athlete have really helped shape her, from being a great teammate to the highs and lows and frustrations of disappointments and failures, and then dusting herself off, and not just her, all of the teammates and people I've coached, and moving forward from those experiences and learning how to cooperate and work together and to be better communicators. All of these things have happened because of their experience as an athlete. And if Title IX wasn't put in place 50 years ago, half of those young women would have had the opportunity that they've been not given, but they've earned. And so it's really been a great experience to sit on that front row. And then this year, kind of seeing how nothing was really happening, and I was sitting in the sidelines waiting. Somebody's going to do something. Someone's going to stop this. And that's, you know, at some point I kind of felt I'd had enough was enough, and I didn't really purposely jump in the arena to speak out. It's just kind of where it happened. And you know, I feel fortunate in that I've met so many people as this has happened. And I think a couple things I would just share personally with you that I feel like I've seen from speaking out. I want to say one thing, and everybody in this room knows that, is we need to trust what we see. And we all saw, from athletes to parents to coaches to the parents to former athletes, that biological men competing with biological women is inappropriate. It's not right. And one of the things I've really seen, I feel like young people have a very difficult time understanding this. is that, you know, I would say at 25 years and younger, 30 and younger right now, we've really been taught to be inclusive. And I'm all about inclusion, but fair sport, fair play, safe sport, and fair play and inclusion do not all have to be lumped together. And you kind of have to pick. They are not, they can be separated, and we can include people, and we can include everybody. I think first thing, everybody should have the ability to compete and participate in sports. I mean, that's the beautiful thing of it, is everybody has an opportunity to play a role and enjoy those opportunities. But when it comes to including like biological men with biological women, we're really muddying the waters. And let's face it, sports are organized and set up with very black and white rules, and to gray and muddy those just for the sake of inclusion, it hurts people. And we're witnessed that this year. And if we continue, if people like us don't get the word out and push others who know that it's wrong to kind of speak up and realize that these two can be separated. Inclusion doesn't have to be a part of competitive sport in fair play. Then we're going to lose that battle. And I feel like Icons is really bringing a lot of energy to that. It's bringing many organizations together. And let's face it, it is an opportunity for former athletes to support the young women that are currently athletes and future young women, our daughters, our grandchildren, in the future to have a fair and safe opportunity to compete and have all the benefits that I've witnessed and many of you have all had. So I just really want to encourage people. I know in this room there's probably people who are not afraid to speak out, but that's the one thing I've heard. When I did speak out, I've really received a lot of support, but I really don't ask for support. I just would really instead ask for you to speak up and step up to the plate. And we can all, if we see something's wrong, we should really step up and say something. And that doesn't mean by saying something that we're being hurtful at all. And if we're respectful and we make our point, get our point across, hopefully others will follow. And I really encourage everyone, men, women, athletes, to kind of think, how can you respectfully make a statement to defend what you know is right, and that is fair play, fair sport, and the opportunity for women to have their own arena to be their best. So thank you.
Our next speaker is Julia Chang. She's a Taekwondo master and transformation coach.
Thank you, Marcy, for the introduction, and thank you, Kim, both of you, for having me here. I wear many different hats, but I stand before you today as a mom of 3 and a Taekwondo master. I'm a world-certified Taekwondo master, Kuki-1 4th degree black belt, USA Taekwondo coach, and a board member of the Maryland State Taekwondo Association. As a former athlete and now coach in the Olympic sport of Taekwondo, I'd like to share more about what Taekwondo is and also share my experiences. Taekwondo is a Korean martial art that's taught in nearly 200 countries to over 70 million people worldwide. There are several events an athlete may participate in: forms, board breaking, and sparring. Sparring is the event that's in the Summer Olympics, so that's what I'm going to focus on here. It is a free-fighting, combat sport using kicks and punches to the body, face, and head. Traditionally, the athlete with the most points in a certain amount of time frame wins. Brackets are organized by several categories: age, belt level, weight, and sex. The day before competition, there are weigh-ins. If you do not make applied weight, you can be disqualified from the event. At the local level, you must be moved into your new division. The reason for this is solely based on safety and fairness. The goal of a sparring match is to land as many kicks and punches on the opponent to win. Now, while the goal is to win, as a coach, and my husband, who's also a coach and a former member of Team USA, will firmly agree that our #1 priority is the safety of our athletes. In a sparring match, it's imperative that the coach and athlete are one. The coach sees what the athlete may not and gives direction. In the best case scenario, my athletes has faster and stronger kicks and can beautifully execute strategic kicks like the jumping back kick. In the worst case scenario, my athlete's skill level is far less than the opponent. There are a few safety measures put in place to protect athletes, such as a point gap. Let's say the scoreboard has a point gap of 12 points. The match automatically stops, and the winner's called after the second of 3 rounds. We want to preserve athlete morale and ensure the safety of the athlete. If in round 1, I see the opponent is significantly more skilled with faster and stronger kicks, and I see my athlete, for lack of a better word, being pummeled, I'll throw in the towel and forfeit the match. Why? Why would I do this? Why would I forfeit the match? 3 words: safety, safety, safety. Listen, my main goal today was to share an inside look into what it's like in the sport and how guidelines, rules, divisions, and brackets are in place for the safety and fairness of all Taekwondo athletes and to preserve the integrity of the sport. World Taekwondo is a governing body of the sport, and on its website has eligibility regulations for transgender athletes. Seeing that this is a combat sport, that's a little concerning. I'm not sure if it's to be politically correct or for their preventative actions, but it's concerning. So I stand before you here today to do my part so that my daughter and all athletes never have to be placed in a situation where their safety is at risk. Thank you.
Our last 2 speakers are representatives of the track and field community. First up is Selena Soul. You may have seen her recently featured in Matt Walsh's documentary, What is a Woman?
So my name is Selena Soul, and I was a high school track and field athlete in Connecticut. And I was one of the first to start speaking about this issue. My mother and I started locally in 2018. We went around with the old-fashioned way with a clipboard and a petition going around to people asking if they could sign in order to protect women's sports. We did some little local interviews, and then in 2019 is when I went national with this issue. I started when I was 16 years old, speaking on a national level about this, and it's just amazing to see everything that has happened because of this, because I was one of the very first. So I started track and field when I was 8 years old. Both of my parents did it growing up, and it was just so natural for me to get into it. And from the very first moment I ever stepped foot on a track in my very first race, I fell in love with the sport and knew that that's what I needed to do for the rest of my life. And I am a short sprinter and a long jumper. I do everything under 200 meters, and obviously long jump in both indoor and outdoor. And in my high school career, I was a 10-time all-conference title holder, 5-time all-state, 3-time all-New England. I left Glastonbury High School with 5 school records, and I qualified for nationals 4 separate times. And that was with missing 1 season because of COVID. So I first noticed biological males during my freshman year, and I wasn't as good at sprints at that point, so I didn't think much of it. But then my sophomore year, in the 2 weeks in between the indoor and the outdoor season, there was one athlete that competed as a male up until then, and then that 2-week break switched to competing on the girls' team. And that one athlete dominated the field, and between the 2 biological males in sports, they took away 15 women's state championships from countless women. And I knew that I needed to speak up about this after I lost out on the opportunity to qualify for the regional New England meet in the 55-meter dash. I was 1 spot away from qualifying for finals, 2 spots away from qualifying for New England's. And I still qualified in my other 2 events, in long jump and the 4x200-meter relay. So I was quite literally on the sidelines watching my own event, and I was extremely distraught because I had friends competing, so I wanted to watch them and support them, but I also knew that I just couldn't bear to watch it because I knew that I should have been there competing and posting a better time to put me in better standing for college coaches. And for me, it was imperative that I start speaking. My mother grew up in a communist country where she didn't have the right to speak, and I gave so many of these girls courage. One is in the audience, Chelsea. She'll be speaking tomorrow. And it was just so important for me to speak up and voice my opinions and ask for fairness to be restored to women's sports, because I knew that by the time that I was done with high school that, you know, our issue wasn't resolved, but I needed to make sure that all the future generations of girls, of, you know, my potential daughters, will have their fair chance at sports. And I want to ensure that no other little girl will have to go through the same heartbreak that I went through, knowing that there is nothing you can do to beat these athletes, but that you need to keep women's sports as women's sports and ensure that women are guaranteed their rights to win. We should not be just allowed to participate, but to succeed. Thank you.
I just wanted to mention that in our haste of trying to put together this conference, obviously we could not reach out to everyone we wanted to in the time frame, and Selena found out about Las Vegas on Thursday, and she put herself on a plane to come here. So thank you so much. Okay, our last speaker is also from the track and field community, Madison Dubois.
You're going to have to bear with me because I forgot to bring my notes from the rally. But hi, I am Madison Dubois. I am a cross-country and track athlete at Southern Utah University, and I, just like many others here, have been running since the age of 5 and immediately fell in love with it, knew I wanted to do it up through college. And I received a scholarship at Southern Utah, and that was like the greatest day ever when I found out I was going to get to run collegiately. And quickly I learned, you know, you're good at the high school level, but then you come up to this level, and I learned quickly what it takes to be good at this level. And just to put into perspective, like this morning I woke up at 4:30, thank you to my mom for biking with me, and got my 8 miles in so that I could be ready for a radio interview at 6:30, drove down here to Vegas. We'll do all of this, which I'm so thankful to be here, and then I will, at 6 o'clock, go for a shakeout and drive back to Cedar. And there are girls across the country that are doing stuff like this every single day just to get in what we need to get in and do our hard work that we need to do. And so I came into my freshman year, and that was exactly how you would expect a freshman year to go. You're just trying to figure it out. Everything is new. You're adapting to everything. And what I was not expecting was on the first day of practice, our coach told us that we would be racing a biological male in our conference. And throughout the year, I earned a spot at our indoor conference championship, which I was stoked to have. That was the best news. And I got entered into many events, and one was the distance medley relay. And I got to run the first leg of the relay, and I still remember my freshman self. That race went out so fast, so I dug down and ran with literally everything I had in me. And I handed off the baton, went into the infield, and was cheering on my Southern Utah teammates when I heard something that in my 14 years of running I have never heard, and those were the words, "slow down." This was said by the coach to the male athlete that was competing in the women's division. I was not the only one that heard these words, and I looked around, and sure enough, there were many other women athletes there, female athletes, that couldn't believe what was just being said. And instantly, that's what the talk was about. Not about the race going on, not about anything other than those words that were being yelled by a coach to a male athlete competing in the women's division. I have 2 years left of running, and I'm so thankful for the opportunities that I'm given, but it is scary to think about what could happen over the next 2 years with how rapidly all of this is going on. So I just pray that we can use our voices and come together, and I'm so thankful for the opportunity to be here and use our voices. And I think that as women, if we can come together, and like so many have said, our voices are so much stronger together. And I'm so thankful for the women before me that have given me these opportunities, and I'm so thankful to be here and use my voice together, and I will continue to use my voice to fight for this fight. Thank you.